Madam Chair, Mr. McLeod, I agree with you that Section 5 of the FTC is a very, very broad mandate that the FTC can use. So in your testimony, you indicated that as we're concentrating on helping the small businesses, that one area that the FTC should really look at is focusing on barriers to entry for small businesses. And I think, I'll get back to you, but Mr. Rubin, is that what you were referring to when you said that the AAI report and its emphasis on looking at vertical relationships and the impact that that vertical relationships can pose to barriers to entry? Are you kind of on the same page on looking at barriers to entry as a way that we can, the FTC enforcement can really help small businesses? Are you talking about the same things here?
With the caveat that I don't think there's any particular concentration on which portion of the antitrust laws ought to be employed. The main thrust of the idea is that vertical relationships as a problem for entry, as an anti-competitive problem, have pretty much fallen by the wayside, whether it's Section 5, Section 2, even Section 1, as has traditionally been used in vertical problems. I don't think that matters much. The important thing is that vertical relationships deserve, in the view of the AAI report, to be revitalized as a subject for any.
And vertical relationships, to look at vertical relationships, that's within the purview of the FTC Act, is it not?
Certainly.
Unfair methods of competition. And so with regard to small businesses, both of you would agree that the enforcement by the FTC should focus on those kinds of relationships, vertical relationships as a barrier to entry? Mr. McLeod?
Yes, I think that a good way from a competitive standpoint to look at vertical relationships is to ask the question whether a vertical relationship begins to foreclose small businesses and entrance into a market from access to the channels of distribution. And if it does, the antitrust laws are very well equipped to take care of those. The antitrust laws are less likely, obviously, to look at a vertical relationship between a small seller and a small buyer. There does need to be some sort of market effect of these things, but beyond that, the antitrust laws, and especially the Federal Trade Commission Act, are well equipped to investigate and prosecute areas where the competition is being harmed.
Is resale price maintenance a per se violation of the FTC laws?
It is not a per se violation of the FTC laws, and indeed the Federal Trade Commission Act doesn't typically apply the per se rule. That's typically considered under the Sherman Act. But just last month, the Supreme Court, a little bit longer ago now, in the last term, the Supreme Court had decided to return resale price maintenance to a rule of reason approach. And that means that for future prosecutions, and for a practical matter, this is what the agencies have been doing for years, the agencies will look to see whether or not the resale price maintenance involved is on balance benefiting or harming competition. And the answer I think you can think of in very simple terms. If I were to start a small business tomorrow baking cookies, and I had a couple of distributors to sell those cookies on the mall, there would not be a real issue to be concerned about if I were asking my distributors to charge $1 a cookie. It is a very different issue if one is comprising virtually an entire market and is fixing for that entire market the prices that retailers would charge.
So based on the competitive strength of whoever is imposing the resale price maintenance, I mean, basically it would be the, I guess, the supplier, it should be, would you agree that it should be per se? Once that initial determination is made, resale price maintenance should be per se a violation? Would both of you agree with that?
No, I think at that point we are out of the realm of per se, and we are asking ourselves, if there is a market effect, would we condemn the practice? And I think the answer there is very easily reached under the rule of reason. So The per se rule, there are areas where the courts have adopted modified per se rules, and they very seldom enhance the antitrust analysis. It is much easier to say something is either always wrong or something will be wrong when we can identify that there is a competitive harm done from it.
Yeah, I think I'm getting a little too esoteric here. We're talking about FTC enforcement, and I'd like to ask the two of you, with regard to the current FTC enforcement that supports small businesses and lowers barriers to entry, do you think the kind of actions that they've been taking, say, over the last 10 years, promote help small businesses because they're looking at barriers to entry?
Well, if I may respond, Congresswoman, the key event with respect to resale price maintenance is the Supreme Court decision in Legion of a couple of months ago, wherein the court ruled that the correct analysis for resale price maintenance was under the rule of reason,
Okay.
rather than per se unlawful as it had been theretofore. The problem, as the AAI sees it in their report, is that this is an open-ended analysis, that it requires more structure. They advocate that there should be a presumption that resale price maintenance is inherently suspect, and if there is a mechanism to cabine the otherwise open-ended analysis of the rule of reason, that we believe would be more helpful in ameliorating resale price maintenance.
I appreciate that discussion, but actually my question was whether the current FTC enforcement addresses what you were talking about, Mr. McLeod, barriers to entry, because we're here to try and support and help small businesses. So is that the kind of enforcement that the FTC is engaging in the entire realm of enforcement that they can engage in? Are they placing enough emphasis on stopping barriers to entry and thereby helping small businesses?
I would like to see more. And I think the Federal Trade Commission itself has said that it would like to do more as well. It has set very ambitious goals for itself in bringing these kinds of cases. They have a brand-new director in charge of the Bureau of Competition branch that investigates these cases, and I think we can expect to see from the FTC some more activity in this regard. It is very hard, I also make this point in my statement, for us sitting on the outside to know exactly in any individual case whether the FTC got it right or got it wrong. The last case the FTC brought in the non-merger area, at least the last significant controversial one, the commissioners themselves disagreed. So it is sometimes difficult to know whether or not the FTC is following the rule to go where the harm is worst and try to address that harm, but that's exactly where I think they are trying to head.
Time has expired.